Alright guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be focusing on identifying and proving parts of congruent triangles congruent. So it's a little bit different than the last couple days. We were doing the triangles themselves. Now we want to focus on specific parts. We're going to show that mastery in class by scoring at least an 80% on the exit ticket. Hopefully you have the note sheet in front of you. If you don't, take out a blank sheet of paper and we'll get you a fresh copy tomorrow. Now, when we talk about congruent triangles, they are triangles with the same side and the same angles. This also means that all corresponding parts, and corresponding is the same thing we taught corresponding angles, same place on the triangle, so all the sides and all the angles are still congruent. Now, we already talked about congruency statements. When the triangles are congruent, we can write a congruency statement. In this case, ABC is congruent to DEF. Now, the big thing here is that if you have a valid congruency statement, it's going to match all the angles and all the sides. So, if I take statement ABC is congruent to DEF, when we go to match these up, A is going to correspond with D. They're both in the first part of their congruency statement. B is going to correspond to E. They're both in the second part of their congruency statement. And C is going to correspond with F. They're both in the third spot of their congruency statement. Now, to know what that is, we're going to talk about something called Cpctc. What that means is congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Now, you're going to hear me say Cpctc instead of saying that whole thing out every time. But the big thing to keep in mind is that congruent parts of those triangles are congruent. However, you have to know the triangles are congruent to be able to talk about the parts. If you don't know if they're congruent, you can't assume that the parts are going to be. So, if we have triangles, we look at number 1 and 2, there's always going to be 3 sides and 3 angles. So if it asks for all congruent angles and all congruent sides, you need 3 of each. Well, if I look, I'm just going to write this a little bigger. J matches with P. They're both in the first spot on the congruency statement. So angle J is congruent to angle P. From here, K matches up with Q. They're both in the second part, so angle K is congruent to angle Q. Last, we have L corresponds to R. They're both in the third spot, so angle L is congruent to angle R. Now, when we talk about sides, if you need to draw out your triangles, you can. So JKL, and I'm going to put them in the same spot to make it easy, PQR. So now if I talk sides, I have side JK is going to be congruent to side PQ. And we know this by looking. JK is the first 2 letters in our congruency statement. PQ is the first 2 letters in the congruency statement. If I do side KL, that's going to be congruent to side QR. You can either look at the triangles because we drew them according to our congruency statement, or notice KL is the second and third spot, while QR is the second and third spot. My last set of congruent sides, JL is congruent to PR. Now, we could have put LJ. It doesn't matter. If we put LJ, make sure you put RP. It's important to correspond what they do. If I start with L, I need to start with R because that's what it corresponds to. If I start with J, I need to start with P because that's what that corresponds to. You can try example 2 on your own. We will go over that in class tomorrow. Now, if we look at example 3, we are given KPM is congruent to AYC. We need to complete the following congruency statements. Now, I'm going to write the congruency statement just a little bigger so we can match them up. And I'm going to start at the beginning. Angle K is congruent to angle A. They're both at the first spot. Angle P is congruent to angle Y. They're both in the second spot. And last but not least, M is congruent to C. They're both in the third spot. Now, you don't have to label the triangle, but for those of you who are visual, it just helps. Now, if I look at side PM, well, PM is the last two in my congruency statement, so that's going to correspond to YC. And we also know it's between my purple and red angle, so that needs to be between my purple and red angle. If I do PK, PK is going to be congruent to YA. And then I have CA congruent to MK. So if I look at my sides, first I have KM. Well, this is spot 1, and that's spot 3. So if I go 1, 3 on the other side, it's congruent to AC. If I do CY, that's spot 3 and spot 2, so it is congruent to MP, spot 3 and spot 2. PK is 2, 1, so I'm going to go 2, 1, and that's going to be side YA. Angle Y, well, if I follow my purple line, that goes to angle K. Oh, and I apologize, that's angle P. Angle K, if I follow my blue line, is congruent to angle A. If I do angle ACY, again, look at the order they go in. This is 1, 3, 2. So I need to go angle K, M, P. 1, 3, and then 2. Triangle MPQ, or MPK. So 3, 2, 1 is congruent to CYA. YAC is 2, 1, 3. So if I do 2, 1, 3, it becomes PKM. You can put the numbers to help you. You can draw the lines to help you. You can use the triangles to help you. Whatever is going to work. Now, if we look at example 4, now we're going to talk about missing measures. If we look at the measures, we're only given some of them, but we can match everything up. If I look, I have STW is congruent to BFN. So, S is going to match with B, T is going to match with F, and W is going to match with N. So now we can go through and label what we know. I have side WS, and we know that WS is 9 centimeters. Well, if I look at WS, that's 3 and then 1 in the first one. So I'm going to go to side NB. They're going to be congruent. So NB is also 9 centimeters. If I look at side ST, it is 17 centimeters. Well, ST corresponds to BF. So this side is also 17 centimeters. Now we can look at some of our angles. I have 67 degrees at angle S. Well, I know S corresponds to B, so B is also going to be 67. If I look at 82, that's with angle N. Angle N corresponds to angle W, so that's also going to be 82. Now, we can use what we know to find my missing third angle. Add them up, subtract from 180. Both of those angles are going to be 31. So now it makes it easier to label what we need over here. If I look, BN is 9 centimeters. TW is 14 centimeters because TW, I missed one side, corresponds with NF, which is also 14 centimeters. BF is 17 centimeters. Angle W is 82 centimeters. Angle B is 60, or degrees, not centimeters. Angle B is 67 degrees, and angle F is 31 degrees. If you need to use different colors to be able to do this, use different colors. But make sure you fill in everything you know that corresponds, and use that congruency statement. Try number 5 on your own. We'll go over that in class tomorrow. The last one we're going to look at on here is number 6. We want to find the values of x, y, and z. Now, the big thing we need to keep in mind here is my congruency statement. U is going to correspond to t, v is going to correspond to s, and w is going to correspond to r. So now we can match up what we need to know. If I look at side uv, that tells me it's 12x minus 7. Well, uv corresponds with ts. Well, if corresponding parts are congruent, that means 12x minus 7 equals 53. Well, if 12x minus 7 equals 53, that's going to tell me x equals 5. If I look at side UW, UW matches up with TR. Well, I know TR is 50. So I'm going to take 3z plus 14 and set it equal to 50. They're congruent parts, and congruent means they're equal. So z is going to equal 12. Last but not least, I have WV, which is 57. Well, WV matches up with RS. So now I'm going to take 5y minus 33 and set that equal to 57. If we solve it, you should get y equals 18. But keep in mind, congruent parts of congruent triangles mean that they equal each other. The word congruent does not change just because we're getting into triangles. They're still equal to each other. Please bring your notes to class tomorrow. We're going to continue going over some of these and solving them. I look forward to seeing you then.